Well, most people pull through, even with an increase in 60%, because it's usually 80% successful, and so now it's just 40% successful, whatever it is. So, okay, so they go off on their hot date. Now, if you learn about that, they increased your odds of dying while you were out of it. They asked full price. They did that to you in open heart surgery? Fuck them. They are going down. That medical practitioner doesn't get to practice again. And no, you're not going to pay for them risking your life. You see, there's a natural understanding that the whole relationship is based on trust. You do not tell a therapist your most vulnerable and sacred truths, your deepest pains, your deepest feelings, unless they sign the implicit contract that I am never going to use this to hurt you. That's why I'm independent from your life. Now, and this is true, your partner is an addict. A lust addict, a fear addict, a shame addict, a trauma addict. Your partner is an addict. And addicts will at times always betray the relationship. So if you go into all of this delicate terrain with your partner, particularly the kinds of partners that our culture produces, they are going to betray that trust to some degree from time to time when they lose it, when they succumb to their addiction. Now, that's the whole point of a therapist. It's not that the therapist isn't an addict with her partner. The whole point of a therapist is that it is an independent relationship. It's like, why would your therapist be addicted to making you feel bad? She might be addicted to making her husband feel bad when he was talking about leaving her, because she has a compulsion and a trauma around abandonment. And so if you get anywhere near that subject, she'll pull out every knife imaginable and start screaming to get you away from the truth that could lead to the end of the relationship. But what a therapist, if they're in any way sane, is not going to behave like an addict, because it's just a few $100. I mean, most people don't behave, the demon doesn't come out for a few $100. It comes out because their inner 6-year-old that needs that person, is going to be left and blah, blah, blah. So the purpose of a therapeutic relationship is independence. That's the key. The protection is they're going to be your therapist whether you're single or in the relationship. They're going to, you're going to be a customer or someone else is going to be a customer. That's the whole safety net, is in the independence. Now this is where it gets tricky. And this is where Peter's betrayal, well, if we go to the Peter to the facilitator relationship, where is it? Peter marriage. No. We'll just add that. I did Peter to High, which I talked about as a school, but Peter has an ethical relationship with Anne Watts. Now, Anne Watts taught Peter. Anne Watts seduced need. well, Peter seduced need in Ann Watts, meaning there is an interdependent relationship, and there are aspects of need and compulsion within that relationship. Anne has, in a certain way, a deeper relationship with Peter Sandhill than with myself for two reasons. Because her relationship to High is deeper than her relationship to me. The relationship to Peter, the combination of facilitating together, sleeping together in the same bed, who knows what else goes on there, because when you look at the behind the curtain betrayal pattern, who knows? All the facilitators could be sleeping together in their neutral, not sleeping together bed, and whatever, and part of this the matrix of secrecy and shame and all of that. Who knows? But Peter has an ethical responsibility not to betray Anne and not to betray me. In other words, when Peter betrays High, he betrays me. Meaning, if Peter does what's best for my benefit, there's no problem. If I come out the other end, that's all that matters in this whole framework. If because I am the archetypal High client, I am the patient, the client, the mission, the student, the community member, I am the reason. Meaning in this archetypal dance of roles, my role is the reason that High exists. So the single most important equation in this entire matrix of relationships is, does the archetypal client, patient, student communicate, the whole thing, do they come out better at the end? That's all that matters. Because if that equation works, it doesn't matter how it's formulated, Peter plus Anne minus Sarah times Felicia multiplied by 10 workshops. If that equation ends in the result that the client comes out more sane, healthier, more supported, more able to take care of themselves, with a better life than when they trusted the matrix of facilitator, protocols, relationships, the school, all of that. If the client comes out better, then this matrix has integrity with its mission and the underlying foundation stone of trust. And more work will come into High. More participants will come into High. Because people will say, oh, how did you get so better? And I'll say, well, these guys. And despite the betrayal system early on, particularly in the early stages of my relationship with High, that was the case. So in the early system, the first round of Peter abuse happened, but I didn't take his advice to do MDMA together. I didn't form a romantic attachment with Peter. And it was damaging and confusing and insane, but it was a 20%, meaning Peter Sandhill, in my private work with him, deleted 20% of the value of High. And in my first 6 workshops, I was learning some core technology such as permissions, boundaries, etc., that were quite useful. And the extent of trauma had not started to play it out as it would over 100 High events, while the learning stayed the same. So I experienced a high growth curve in the first 6 workshops, which by the 10th workshop began to plateau, and then it was, the longer I was in the system, it became I'm not learning anything new. The same problems are coming up chronically and hurting me chronically. So the value to pain ratio shifted. And then the real disaster came, when I'm in a suicidal state, because I don't have a paradigm to win in relationships. And relationships are, in fact, a really big factor, particularly when you don't have the childhood, you don't have a family framework, because, so my family splintered around the childhood abuse dynamic, which means that there's no sibling support because we're all damaged in the same way. For example, I called 2 of my siblings and I talked with each of them for 4 hours about suicide because I was very serious about looking at options like, is there some door I haven't opened that could allow me to live and not be in way more pain than well-being, which is like, why am I in this game? It's like, it's so quick to end the pain cycle. It's so painful to be in this game. So I talked with my sister for 4 hours, and not only was I sick for 4 days afterwards, but as I repeatedly pointed out to her, I said, do you realize you have not validated a single one of my feelings in 4 hours? You have criticized and shamed me and not offered empathy for a single thing that I'm saying in a suicidal state. Do you realize how sick this is? And of course, in a good defense and denial pattern, she completely denied all of that. I said, this recording is an MP3 file. Would you like to listen to the 4 hours of your sustained and willful denial of every single thing that I feel and say? Would you like to listen to 4 hours of your cruelty to me in a suicidal state? And she said no. She was annoyed, of course, that it was recorded, like the facilitators, of course, are also annoyed that their abuses are on recording, because that's part of the defense. Well, I tried another sibling. At 3.5 hours, he broke down in tears. He said, Dane, what the fuck do you want me to say? He said, if I let this in, I'm trying to fight suicide myself. I can't go there with you. I feel like a complete and utter failure. And the only chance that I have to fight this is to argue with you like I'm arguing with my own feelings. So he broke down at 3.5 hours, which means he's a little healthier than my sister. The disease in some way went down with age. I was the oldest, so I got practiced on the most, and then my sister, and then my brother managed to have some feelings. My youngest brother is the healthiest because parents dump the most shame, and generally in sequence to age, and once they've passed on all the abuse to the eldest and the second and stuff, by the time they get to the end, they're feeling human again, somewhat. But, there's no family to turn to. I can call up my mother and be lied to and be told what an idiot I am for having any feelings at all. But there's no family to turn to to repair the family wound. Well, try and talk with an American woman. Anyone want to go into a couple dynamic to explore the aches and griefs of our culture and our pain? Anyone? You? No? You're desperate and lonely, but you'd rather be desperate and lonely than talk about this. I see. Okay, great. You over here? Now, you're absolutely can't find a good man, etc., but you'd also quite happily die single than talk about this. I see. Okay, great. Okay. So, okay, here I am. How about my therapists? How about my school? You see, this is what ends when everyone wants you to die because they would rather die than go into this part of their own psyche. A sensitive is likely to kill themselves to accommodate the abusive dynamic. A sensitive feels the hatred that comes towards their truth. Now, when this is masked by lies repeatedly, it doesn't help. The fact that you feel intense hostility coming towards you the more you tell the truth. Like, do you think there's a single facilitator that's going to call me up and say, wow, you have just given me the way to form the next organization. You've just told, you've just stood by everything good in me. You've given us hope. You broke through the matrix. You learned something. I'm glad we played some role in you because you're here. And then that's why I've taught this my entire life. That some part of me or some student, etc., would talk about this, would get it, and would take it beyond what I can do. This is why I've sacrificed decades of my life, is to hope that I would someday see a student who would tell the truth and take a stand by that and be willing to die for that. That's why I got into this business. Or are they wondering how many Facebook likes, how many dopamine hits are going to decrease? Where's the focus? So Peter betrayed Anne and me by violating his facilitator agreements, such that he turned me into a dirty secret, a shame secret. Now, this is defined by what is kept secret, meaning anything that the Human Awareness Institute will spend any energy at all suppressing, denying, hiding, and controlling is the clue to its shame, to its dirt, to its hidden agenda. Now, do you think that the facilitators would have disabled my email accounts, would have sued me to shut down a website, would have sent me a legal contract promising never to tell anyone, which I didn't sign, by the way. They didn't even get my name right, and I pointed that. But by then I was also cottoning on to the problem. But they were not asking me to sign this so that they could help me. They were asking me to sign this so they could bury me. And by me, I'm talking about the truth. They were quite happy to enable the addiction, to enable the lies, the coping mechanism. What they're killing off is the authentic self to protect the shame secret. So the Human Awareness Institute, which denies that this is a high issue repeatedly in writing, Jason Weston was the head, but Jason was a patsy in many ways, put forth by all the facilitators. As a frontman, Jason doesn't have psychological training and ethical training and this kind of thing like that. He was sorting out a lot of their logistics. But let's send the innocent guy out to deal with the person that we're throwing under the bus. So they'd meet behind closed doors, and then Jason would represent, just like Anne would represent. So Peter betrays Anne because Anne doesn't want to hurt me. But she's put in a position. She's put me in a position because she was the last person who recommended Peter without caveat at a level 4 recovering from abuse from another high man at a level 4. I got to level 4 because I was falling apart from an abuse pattern that happened a couple weeks earlier. I got there, and Peter was nice to me. And Ann Watts, of course, announces to the room what a great guy Peter is, and he's happy to help, and Peter announces he's happy to help, and I think, psychedelics is my last bastion of, it's like I've tried everything else. $150,000 of therapy, eaten healthy organic food, used the high ultraviolet lights, done 10,000 pages of journaling, hundreds of hours of inner child work, worked with Reiki, the whole spiel. Been doing it since I was 12. And I'm in so much pain, I want to die. I'm trying to rack my mind for one more reason to live. And it's like, well, I hate quick fixes. I've had horrible experiences of adults leaning on me in their bad trips. I don't want that. But I have never tried psychedelics. And then I remember Peter Sandhill had tried to get me to do MDMA with him. Peter says he loves me. Peter's trying to be nice. It's worth a shot. It's worth a shot. I am desperate. I am in a desperate amount of pain. And, if it kills me, well, I'm going to kill myself anyway, and so the risk doesn't seem terribly high in that sense. Well, Ann Watts recommended Peter, again, this great loving guy and all that. Now, she betrays everyone in the community in that recommendation by not, she knew I took her recommendation to work for Peter, with Peter 15 years ago, but she didn't do a follow-up. So if Peter had worked out, I wouldn't have been working with her. And to a certain extent, Ann got business because Peter failed. I took Ann Watts' advice to work with Peter. Peter failed, so I worked with Ann. And so her core... There's a hierarchical level of relationship, and one of the best ways to look at this is, for example, if you're married to someone and they're your employee, it's not a good idea, first of all, because there will always be tensions between what is good for the employee boss role and what is good for the marriage role. Now, the marriage is 10 times more important if you're intelligent, if you understand the mathematics of, if you've got a bimbo type dynamic where, you're supposed to make me look good and you're supposed to make me feel important and it's just a show game for the cult, well, then, of course, that marriage may not be as important as the employee relationship. But a soul marriage, a marriage that deepens who you are and improves the probability field of your future, is more important than an employee dynamic. But in our culture, the boss-work relationship is elevated, unhealthily, I might add. Many tribal cultures spent, first of all, anthropologists show that you cannot spend time with more than 150 people without losing integrity and intimacy. Meaning, if you want to really know people, you've got to have your group be less than 150, or you lose cohesion. And so this is why the Gore-Tex company, learning about this, and the company owner noticed this as well. So they went to quite some unusual lengths not to destroy the culture of Gore-Tex, which was a family-owned business, by keeping the groups. Any one group in Gore-Tex was less than 150 people. 75 to 150 was kind of the sweet spot. And beyond that, you lose cohesion. This corresponds with sociological data, which corresponds to the sizes of many tribes. When you look at Amazonian tribes, they'll often break into two groups at about the 75 to 100 or so point, because that's what the human processor, the human consciousness, can process: the birthdays, the feelings, the beliefs, the nuances, the physical habits of about 150 people max. So if you spend time with more people, you are doing so in a conversation of dishonor. Why dishonor? Because your conscious mind doesn't know who you're dealing with, because you can't keep up with it. So now you start violating things you have forgotten and can't see, which increases the violence in the community. So you've got to split up into that kind of family system. So in this in this particular dynamic, and I've actually lost my thread, so I'll just come back to this. But Anne's yes, the hierarchy of loyalties. So you want to prioritize the marriage. You do not cut your marriage into pieces to get higher performance from your employee husband. If you're hiring your husband, you don't fuck him over or manipulate him to get a little 10% more performance. You don't sell him out to get a promotion to the boss. If you do, you're one of the stupidest individuals around, because you've damaged a marriage, if it's any good, to get a symbol of value, some money, some bizarre status symbol in a cult-like organization. So that's a sellout. It's dumb. So you either keep them separate, or you prioritize the marriage and do your best within the framework of a dual relationship to still have a good employee relationship. You've got to know your hierarchy. And the vulnerability of innocence, that's what we're looking at. Innocence is at the top of the food chain. Innocence is the stem cell of all possibility in the psyche. The fool is the doorway into the unknown. Now, the reason this is such a powerful doorway is, despite the hubris and the terror of the Western psyche, 99.99999% of all there is to know, of all there is to see, of all there is to feel, of all there is to imagine, is in the unknown. It's more. It's in the unknown unknown. Another way of saying it is the conscious mind is 0.0001% of the being. The conscious mind is like a tiny flashlight that is shining on a tiny spot of a vastly bigger object of which we are a part. 99.9999% is unconscious, is unknown. Okay. The fool, the stem cell, the innocence, is the doorway between the tiny bit of us and the vastness of reality. The murder of innocence is the deepest crime within the psyche, because it creates an antagonistic relationship with the majority of who we are. as a species, as a probability field, as a being, as an ecology. Now, we have constructed an incredibly fragile and narrow thread as a cult of human individuals within which the illusion of separation is maintained. It is a fragile illusion. You cut off the supply with ourselves for 3 minutes and we're dead, you see? We don't think about air. We don't understand that we are in a dance with air. We do not exist outside of relationship with the ecology in which we participate, of which we are a part. We do not exist. 3 minutes later, the whole fragile illusion disappears. And the energy doesn't go away. It transforms back into the whole. This body turns back into soil. And the only thing that dissolves is the illusion of separation. We are a part of something much bigger than the conscious mind can grasp. And that fragile partition is so easy to dissolve. Now, the point of that separation in many of our mythologies, and there have been 10,000 mythologies, 10,000 cultures, 10,000 human languages is the best estimate of our anthropologists. Now, some say we're sitting on a turtle. Others say we're, part of a giant snake. So others say that, 10,000 versions of a story. But within every meaningful story, there is the awareness that we are a part of something bigger. Joseph Campbell talks about what to do with these Brahman and Indras. There's these wonderful Indras where they breathe in and a universe comes into their breath, and they exhale and the universe, a whole new universe comes. And they think they're so important because they're the ones that breathe in and breathe out the entire universe. And so they've got to have a palace. And one Indra was getting a little full of himself and decided to create, the most important palace of any Indra. So he's busy this, and his wife is getting tired because, he's so full of himself that the palace is never done, because how could it ever be great enough for him? And so his wife hires a trickster to try and get him down to size so that he'll be a good husband. And the trickster comes in, and behind them there's, an endless sea of ants, coming in and out and in and out and in and out. At the end of the conversation, basically, the wise one and the trickster answers a question from the Indra, what are all those ants? Well, you probably don't want to know, and it's like, yes, I do. What are they? Well, they were all Indras who thought they were the most important Indra in the universe, and they all built their palaces, and at a certain point, their grandiosity, etc., spirals down to where what is the greatest becomes the smallest. They were all Indras, and now they're ants. And that gives a little perspective, and it's not an endless upward spiral. And so he goes back to, first he gets so depressed that he won't come back to sleep with his wife either. So then they have to balance him out a little bit, that he's not nothing and he's not everything. You got to find that sweet spot. Otherwise you're insane. Innocence, the stem cell is billionaires go off to Costa Rica to get stem cell implants because it rejuvenates and extends their bodies, because the stem cell can become anything. The Fool is high in the tarot arcana because the Fool is the tether with the unknown. You see, the Fool walks off the cliff onto something that cannot be seen. The Fool is the gateway to the unknown. He is not foolish. He is the one that knows that there is something there that cannot be seen and cannot be known, and trusts that more than the fragility of the delusional ego experience. The greatest crime of a parent in the sexual molestation and abuse of their children is the destruction of innocence. Because as a child grows into consciousness, what they become conscious of is that which they trusted, that which was bigger than themselves, that which was unknown, used them, lied to them, betrayed them in their greatest innocence and vulnerability. Now what this does is it communicates to the conscious mind that their greatest vulnerability in a sociopathic planet, their greatest vulnerability is trusting the unknown, because that's how the parent was able to use and abuse, shame, and traumatize the child. Was the child's need and the child's trust and the child's vulnerability. And the healthy response that kills the soul and protects the ego by destroying transcendent states of consciousness to emphasize the reptilian brainstem of the fight, flight, freeze mechanism. The greatest wound is to communicate to the ego that the transcendent brain will get them killed, used, humiliated, and tossed out of a sociopathic cult. And that their reptilian brainstem, the 200 million year old crocodile of the ancient mammalian body, will keep them alive. You have just reduced spiritual beings to animals who are terrified of the gateway to the unknown. The beauty and symmetry and geometry of the Fool gets relabeled as foolish and something to be attacked, inside and out, which is why it is the innocent child in school that gets raped, bullied, and punished by those who have already had the innocence taken away from them. And they both hate. They hate the Fool, because the Fool has something that they don't, that has innocence, wonder, and beauty. They hate the Fool, but they also are afraid of it and have got to push it away, because their parents have betrayed the innocence and their teachers have colluded with their parents. Now, as I would try and communicate to my Waldorf teachers anything of the horror of the family system, the Waldorf teachers would get afraid of the veil being dropped within the cult, because one of the matrices in the Waldorf dynamic is the Waldorf teachers have got to sell the parents on the idea that they are superior parents for sending their kids to Waldorf school. Otherwise, why would they fork out the money? And the parents have got to sell themselves on the idea that they're superior parents for sending their kids to Waldorf school. Now, if the teachers say, "You're full of shit. I don't care if you're sending your kid to Waldorf school or not. Why is that kid so scared? Why is that kid developing anxiety, ADHD, panic dynamics? Why is he having nightmares if you're such good parents? What the fuck is going on? This is my student. Now that's loyalty to the student, right? Except what happens in the collusion dynamic? How dare you insult this? How dare you? I'm sending my kid to Waldorf school. I am... You do not talk to me like that. My kid is coming out of this school. You are not getting another penny of me. Okay? So one healthy adult stood up for the child. So the parent has punished the healthy adult and isolated the child. And the entire culture stands round colluding with the parent's right to abuse their child in whatever way they see fit. The child is betrayed by the politician, who will not touch this cycle because they won't get elected. They're betrayed by the teacher, who will not touch this cycle because they might get fired. They're betrayed by the parent, who will not touch this cycle because they might have to deal with the underlying fear and trauma that they're committed to avoiding at all costs. So who's left to protect the innocents? This is the crisis of our cult. And it is our crisis. Because the maimed corpses of innocence that grow up into adult children, grown-up children, have no vision, have no integrity, have no ability to love. They know how to do one thing only, to use other people to maintain the pain at a level that they can bear, using a variety of coping mechanisms and addictive cycles at everyone's expense, because that's what was modeled. That's what's being done. You want to know how to destroy a planet? Well, you start by destroying the soul. You destroy the soul when you tamper with innocence. Your kindest thing you can do, because it is the highest resonance within the psyche, is to protect the thread with the unknown. Because the reason that betraying the innocence in the child-parent relationship is so dangerous is that the child projects the universe as an archetypal shape of the parent. The parent is the first fractal pattern for the unknown and all that's out there, the deity. So it's no wonder we have, particularly in the Old Testament, a punishing son of a bitch as a deity, because we had a punishing son of a bitch as a dad. And and basically that is what gets the deity is the archetypal larger scale version of the childhood parental dynamic. If that archetype is too traumatizing, is too painful, is too shaming, we will become a materialistic cult that is absolutely committed, however insanely, to ignoring the 99.9% that is out there in the inner dimensions and in the unknown, because we know what we will find there. We will find ourselves born again into the void of innocence, into the uncertainty, on nothing else but trust. And we will find the same usury and betrayal that we met as a 6-month-old child. And we don't want to do it. Because as soon as we get into adolescence after this betrayal cycle, what does every adolescent say? I am never going to let anyone do that to me again. I am never going to trust anyone. I am never going to let anyone, never again. And that is said with an intensity and a conviction and a momentum that carries weight. Because then you go to some New Age event, the unknown, the mystery of the universe. It's like, yeah, I'm not doing that shit. I may, buy the robe. I may try and get the trappings that make, look, see, I've got a better altar than you do. I may play that game, but I'm not going in there. And so this is the seriousness of the crime. Having watched my parents betray what was truthful and innocent in me and each of the siblings. And I saw it by age 12, and so I actually confronted my father. I explained to him what he was doing and what Sherilyn was doing to destroy what was good in my younger siblings. I also proved the point. I said, when I babysit them, I do the opposite of what you do, and they become healthy again. And then when you come home, they become delinquent again, because it's a pattern. You're programming them to be this way, and I program them to be this way. And they're kids. They will follow the honey. And you want this. My father turned white because he was smart. He didn't say anything, but he left me alone from that point on. It was very clear that he did not want to talk about that, and he continued the pattern. He consciously destroyed his children to protect his need to avoid his shame and his pain. And no amount of anthroposophy, no amount of channeled work, none of that was dense enough to overcome that pattern. It just made him sad, because his mind knew what was going on, but he didn't have the resources inside to stop the pattern. So it's no wonder I didn't want to take psychedelics. And it's no wonder I was terrified of Peter Sandhill. But his lie, his commitment, certainly something my father wouldn't have had the audacity to do, led to the opening of innocence. And this is what's so interesting. That innocence is not a threat to myself, to Peter, to Hai, to the community. It is a threat to the abuse cycles. It's a threat to ideas like lying to your wife, cheating on your partner, because the mathematics are not supported. When you see clearly, if you don't see clearly, it looks like you're getting away with something. Milton Friedman, one of the better economists in the last 100 years, he's famous for saying there is no such thing as a free lunch. Beware. If you think you're getting something for nothing, you are being lied to. Because it's going against the underlying laws of physics. No energy is created or destroyed. Energy is changed from one thing to another, which means that whatever it is you're getting, what it was changed out of is no more. There is a price for every single thing. You have sex with your best friend's partner, and you think you're getting something for nothing. You're in danger. You're an idiot. You don't understand physics. No. You've just lost your best friend, and now you've lost your sanity about what a friend is. Because if you think that because they didn't find out that you're still best friends, it just reveals, but it doesn't reveal. See, when you're too dumb to know that you're dumb, you don't understand what was lost because you didn't understand what was there in the first place. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Peter didn't get anything for free by lying to his wife. You just pay a price that is more unconscious and usually more damaging. The facilitators thought they were getting a free lunch by denying that the person that they trained, recommended, and sold to me without caveat would get them free money, right? Because nobody knows. They're destroying the entire fabric of trust and mission. They're destroying their own sanity. The most cruel thing you can do is leave them in that level of stupidity, where they think they're getting away with it because they don't understand what it is. Because if you understand what it is, you never get away with anything. The only question is what you sold more or less valuable than what you bought with what you sold? When you sold your marriage for curiosity and lust, was the curiosity and lust more valuable than the marriage you sold? When you sold your facilitators for what, $1,000? What was the thing? When you sold your facilitators, your dignity, your truth, your authenticity, to escalate a romantic relationship with a client, what did you get that was worth losing the foundation of your career? It's not free. When the community saves time by not responding to sexual abuse by another community member, it looks like it's free, right? But what if you enjoy the hedonism of the human awareness workshops and they're no more? Because by participating in a betrayal pattern in which it's fine that clients and community members are abused by the leadership, you define the school as unethical to the point where it needs to end. So now you don't get your party. There's no free lunch. You see, in speaking this, I sell my contract of abusive survival. That gets ripped up because my contract with my abusers says that I never talk about this, that I pretend it didn't happen. The contract that Jason sent me to sign. This never happened. You won't tell anyone about it. You'll never sue us. You see, they thought they were getting legal protection and reputational protection by selling. What they sold was they just told me they don't know what they're doing. They're cowards. They have no ethical framework. And they're quite happy for any high participant to end up worse off as long as they keep their money. They sold the foundation stone for a few bucks. That's a bad deal. Now, the hatred, the backlash, the betrayal, the angry looks, the rejection that I receive for speaking is a cost. But what do I gain? You see, I gain sanity. I gain integration. Now, it's a horrible thing to bribe someone into a community and group on the basis that you're going to be loved and become all you are and grow. And once you have your needs for love and belonging met within the group, ask that person to decide, do you still want to feel like you belong here? Well, there is a price. You've got to give away your sanity, your soul, your intelligence, your connection with yourself, because they are at odds with the delusion we are trying to maintain here. That's the proverbial deal with the devil. The deal with the devil is simply the deal with the cult, which is the agreement we ask every child to make, to give up who they are, to maintain our pretenses so that we feel more comfortable. It's the giving up of that which is beautiful, true, essential, to protect something that is more ugly, more dark, less symmetrical, less valuable, but that keeps the body alive for a little bit longer. It's a difficult conundrum to put a child in. And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, survival of the body comes first. You have survival, security, love, and belonging. So in the traditional framework, nobody breaks this contract. In the traditional framework, now here again, by honoring my wife, the love and belonging that I receive in truth is 10 times bigger than the love and belonging with the facilitator body, with the community. Now, I can see that in also the loyalty pattern, with my wife. See, my wife doesn't ignore an email about shame or feeling devastated. I wrote to every facilitator and said, I'm feeling 1,000 times more pain than I think you understand. That's the pain of being coerced into a soul rift. And they were all silent. You see, that's not love. That's burying the essential goodness in the client to protect what is mean, what is ugly. It is evil. That's what that word was created to represent. That when on the basis of trust, innocence is thrown under the bus to protect what is small, what is ugly. That is evil. And the misery you are in as an ego, after paying that price, is immense. You see, if I didn't have this part, I'd still want to die. Now, I still have many remnants of my contracts with the culture and abuse that feel absolutely exhausting, terrifying, lonely, and miserable. Because they are the areas that I have sold something much more beautiful in order to fit in order to receive something much more mean and ugly, in order to be normal. So in our one-on-one work, Anne generally supported this part. And in doing so, she earned trust. for taking a stand for truth. The problem is that Anne is nested in an environment in which she can only go so far without being cast out. And this is where we get into the inner child work. Because a child will throw away their soul to be accepted by the devil, in this case the parent, the culture, that which is around them in dense physical form. Now, I'm not relating to this in a moral sense or in a, it is its own price. It's not like you're punished because you made a soul, a pact with the devil. That is the punishment. Losing who we are in order to fit in and avoid being hit quite as often is hell. It is the rift. It's not like there's more to come. That is the hell until it is healed. And there's no big super person, organizing it all. It's just, a thick pattern of mathematics in which some people are, at times, our allies. In this case, Anne was my ally in one-on-one work, and my betrayer later on, when she threw her organization, Peter, and me under the bus to guide me towards secrecy. When she asked me to protect High's abuse contract using the trust earned by that innocence in the child. So in this way, Peter's betrayal of Anne taught Peter. Anne gave Peter work, including me. And Peter betrayed Anne by not going to Anne and saying, you've worked with Dane, right? You see, this is how thick it goes. Anne helped me understand that I have Asperger's syndrome, which is as good a name for any for pointing out some of these differences, including, this tendency towards mathematics, which it's an interesting point, of course, because we tend to pathologize difference. I do not pathologize any of these traits. In many ways, I see them as superior to the norm, mathematically speaking, because they deliver better results per unit of energy invested. But our culture is not mathematically oriented. So, Warren Buffett is considered the Wizard of Omaha because he's using this mathematical formula to create money out of money. And that's a deified practice in the cult. Well, I'm using this same mathematical language to create soul value out at the expense of cultural norms. And this is a hated practice in our cult. You can look at the primary loyalty of the cult is to maintain the status quo of the cult. And you can understand that a cult in many ways comes out of trauma, comes out of needing a norm to protect against the unknown. So the cult is the wound. Because unless you experience the life-threatening trauma of being alone as an individual in an ecology that the conscious ego doesn't have the ability to relate to, unless you experience the trauma of being, maybe mauled by an animal, maybe threatened by a tornado, maybe washed by a tsunami, and you realize, I don't know how to survive in this ecology. I don't understand the system, so I need others. I need people. And the people, of course, never fully understand it either. But they develop heuristics. They develop a model of reality that is not reality. It's a model of reality. And as soon as they all start gelling on something, it could be that the god is mad at them and they need to kill virgins. It could be whatever it is. It could be we need to chop off boys' penises. Who knows? Once we develop that model of reality, then we're all going to do it. Why? Because we don't have to face the incredible loneliness and uncertainty of the traumatic unknown. We're all going to do this. And then anyone who doesn't do this is bringing a distinction, bringing a divergence, bringing something we have to think about, something that's scary. It's unknown. So we're going to kill them. And so, every cult has its laws, and anyone who breaks those laws, and the laws have an interesting thing. The laws create a mediocrity, because you have everything above the law is illegal, and everything below the law is illegal. If you create a speed limit, you can't drive too much lower, you can't drive higher. This is the limit. If you create a housing code, this is the code. You have to build with this and this and this way. Well, this is a much superior way of doing it. Well, we don't have codes for that. You can't do it. But it's 10 times better. Well, you can't do it. The law brackets uncertainty and frames mediocrity. You've got horror and heaven on the other side of the cult. And that's what's being protected against, because until you develop an effective model and navigating skills, you can't distinguish between the two. You don't know if it's heaven or hell you're going into, and so you stay in the thing. A cult is like training wheels on a bike. You can't do anything interesting, but it'll keep you alive. And cults don't like hearing that, and so their goal was to get you to ride a bike and then you could take off the training wheels. But the tendency towards self-importance and fear of the unknown is such that, when Timothy Leary, with all of his faults, and started encouraging people to start breaking the consciousness laws with LSD, he was the most dangerous man in America to Richard Nixon, because he was messing with the ideas that said that communism was bad. So if it was taking foothold in Southeast Asia, that was bad. And we got to kill bad things. And so we've got to invent a war in Vietnam. And because these are the people doing this, we've got to burn men, women, and children alive with napalm. I mean, you think of the obsession with Priuses today, and you look at how much of a country went up in smoke and how many millions of Priuses or Teslas it would take just to recover the amount of our ecology that we burned in Vietnam in the name of doing good. Well, you start thinking and stepping outside of that cult, and suddenly you've got the most dangerous man in America, or Mr. Snowden, who has to find refuge with Putin as the only one who'll take him in, given the voracious zeal that the American defense structure has in silencing truth, be it in Assange or anyone who speaks up. And you see the pattern. So the ethics of government says that you do not take the money of the people to hurt the people. It's the people's money. The government has no job unless they are given the authority out of trust by the people. As soon as the government betrays that trust by hurting people with the people's money, they're in the same position as the high facilitators. As soon as Peter Sandhill takes money to harm a client, now the facilitators have to decide whether to silence the harmed client that they were formed to serve, or whether to turn the harm around. But how can you turn a harm around if you are denying that there is harm and denying that it's anything to do with you to turn it around? It's like, will the U.S. government apologize to its people for lying and taking hundreds of billions of dollars to betray various trusts? Or will it spend hundreds of millions of dollars to chase Snowden all the way around the world, waiting to put him in solitary confinement if they can possibly get their hands on him? And Putin has no great love of the truth. So what does the U.S. have to offer Putin before he will hand back a truth teller to the United States to be silenced, along with Chelsea Manning for having the audacity to bring us the truth of Abu Ghraib? The audacity to tell us this is how your tax money is being spent, to create an entire generation of Iraqis who hate you for the brutality, the inhumanity, and the cruelty of your government. Your government went over there and created 1 million people suffering from trauma because of the U.S. liberation of the war on terror, the mass destruction. That's what went on with your money. So you have 1 million Iraqis, children who are growing up with parents with PTSD. That's how your government betrayed you, with your money. Well, can you imagine how much they want to silence Chelsea Manning, a taxpayer, a human being who told the truth about that brutality? And when you understand fractal patterns, can you imagine how much the high facilitators want to silence me? This is how our money, our trust, plays out behind closed doors. Do you spend the money on cleaning up the mess? Or do you spend the money silencing and denying the truth tellers and hoping that you've dug a pit deep enough that they go away? It's a very interesting question, because my sense, and one of the reasons I'm taking a stand here, is if you cannot transform, meaning if you have a public nonprofit devoted to human awareness with this mission in these roles, and you cannot get those people who are convinced that they're doing the right thing to invite truth and honor their own dignity and stop killing their own clients, my life has been in danger at multiple points in this. And I was aware, with great sadness, that my death was less important to the facilitators than the secret, because the fragility came from the intensity of pain and grief of being asked to choose between my soul and belonging. You see, when one's never belonged in a family that hated feelings, and one has some taste of that, for example, from Ann Watts, when one's never belonged in a sociopathic culture that consists of lies, How you doing? I'm fine. Just try telling people how you're doing and watch the fake smile turn into dread and panic as they realize you're actually going to tell them how you're doing and figure out some way to get rid of you and not run into you again, to understand the lies that our cult is built on. So when you find some semblance of that, it's precious because it's real. That's worth trading something for. Meaning it was worth every penny to have something real in me honored and validated by Ann Watts. Every penny. It was worth every penny. Every risk, every aspect where my soul, where who I am got to be. Where I felt I can bring a little bit more of myself to the table. That was priceless. Now, asking someone to choose, be loyal to the secret, or risk that, it's a very heart-rending choice. Meaning this dynamic here splits a culture, splits a community, splits an individual. And it begins at the top. Imagine how Ann Watts felt, knowing what she was betraying, knowing what she was hurting, knowing that she loved me on some level and cared about me, and seeing what the person she trained and recommended and was now protecting told me to do. We see also Anne's confusion because she wants high to continue, but ethically it cannot continue if it will throw its patients under the bus to protect itself, because that is antithetical to its own mission. So it is splitting itself. The good parts in Peter are betraying. Well, you could say the rotten parts of Peter are betraying the good parts of Peter. His commitment to not seeing certain things is stronger than his commitment to his own heart. Peter has commented repeatedly that he is drawn to my innocence. Well, this is the draw of the pedophile to the child. Because every individual who steals the innocence from a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, etc., they're going back to the moment at which their own innocence was taken away from them. And they are grieving the loss of their 6-year-old innocence. But because it has been covered in a contract of secrecy and insanity, where what was stolen from them was called love and for your own good. This is where Alice Miller shines such a beautiful light, and Robert Bly in his talk of the Sibling Society. Where that is taken on that basis, their mind is confused about what love is, because they're still holding on to the abuser as someone who loves them. And so they reenact the wound because it hasn't become conscious as a wound. For it to become conscious of the wound, someone needs to tell them the truth, sit them down and say, look, your parents knowingly hurt and lied to you and took away what was most precious. In order to avoid feeling guilty, they then asked you to go crazy. And as another narcissistic betrayal, they then asked you to be grateful for their abuse and shamed you for your anger, your hurt, and your fear. You were slaughtered at a psychological level, shamed and asked to pay for it. And they walked away, saying you ruined their lives, blaming you for it all. That's the deal you got over there. Well, that is an incredible ocean of rage, pain, and hurt. So you need a companion who is willing to go into the same region of their own psyche. Because no therapist can guide you into this domain unless they've done their own work in this domain. Now, Peter Sandhill defended his father as being someone who loved him. Of course, that's true. But you have to have the distinction between the father who betrayed you, who lied to you, who murdered your soul, and the father who was sad about doing it, and the father that stood up for you from time to time when they had more control of their own pain and their own character. Because all three fathers are in there. And if you confuse the betrayer and the murderer with the one that stands up, and you protect the addiction in your father, you are murdering not only his own soul and yours, but you are creating an opacity over the pattern to such a degree that you will out of necessity, to connect with the wounded part in your own psyche, you will enact the murder onto someone else's innocence that is in a similar position of power and innocence to what you and your father were in. And if you're really dumb, you will call that love. And you will keep it secret in the same way that your father probably didn't do that out in public. And this is also one of the traps, of course, in the New Age, where, when you have a father doing this that defends the abuse. My father died while all of this was happening. And I felt really sad because I was being torn apart, because the split in the high community and the split in each facilitator around this migrates down. It's the same split. When you have a corrupt parent who asks you to choose between your soul and being a member of that family, and unless you murder the truth and agree to be ashamed that you ever knew that truth, how dare you say that about me? Don't you ever say it again, and get that thing out of my house. When the realization that your body will be thrown out of that house or beaten unless you banish your soul, the one who told you the thing that was so obnoxious to the abuse pattern's ears, unless you understand the pain of that, you will perpetuate that murder to the same region of the soul in your partner. I do it to my wife. I'm at my wit's end because I'm crazy. I'm scared because I know I'm insane. You're insane when you have a map of reality that doesn't work, that you're loyal to because a fucking abuser said, here's the map of reality. Now, do you want to be beaten right now? No? Okay. Here it is. Follow this map. But the road goes that way. The actual road goes that way. Shut up. Follow it, but it leads right into a jungle. No, the road is that way. Follow it, or I'll beat the shit out of you. If you have not met the rage of the insane parent who sends you off to die, you see it again in Lord of the Rings with the Return of the King, the two towers, that framework where you have the steward. Insane, filled with despair and hopelessness, asking his son to drive to be slaughtered, feeling satisfaction at murdering his one loyal son. He didn't want the loyal son. He wanted the son who would bring him the addictive substance. He didn't want Boromir, who would save the planet. He wanted the drug. And that fucking guy let it get by. He wants that son dead. And the sadness is in the child that does not know the distinction between the murderous father who betrays not only himself and his own soul, but everyone, the kingdom. It's the same persona. It is the same persona. When Peter Sandhill told me, "I will never trust you again for the rest of your life," it was the addict and the murderous father telling the truth teller he was not wanted. Because Peter wanted his drug, which was secrecy, how great he was, and lust. That's what he wanted. And I had taken the drug away. I paid to be guided by an addict, by a liar, by a betrayer, by someone who would destroy his own family, his own community, himself and me, to protect the delusion that he is more loyal to than he is to himself. Now I fell in love with who Peter was, with who he is, with himself. But having signed too many contracts of secrecy and denial, when Peter fought all awareness of his betrayer, I couldn't see what was fighting me. I couldn't see the ravenous beast that would skewer a young girl to get a fix. I couldn't see the addict because my parents had beaten the vision out of me, because they didn't want to see their coward any more than Peter Sandhill. And this is why I say that if you're in, quote, New Age light type circles, you're in more danger in a shadow adverse cult, such as our own cult, than if you're with a beer belly, beer guzzling, broken bottle hit you over the head. You know that's shitty, and everyone else knows it's shitty, so you're not insane. But that harm can be easier to deal with because you're sane than the New Age light teacher who rapes you in the name of love, than the Catholic priest, the deification of God, who molests deaf boys in boarding school, and the Vatican that tries to shut it up to protect the church's image. You see, the Vatican is in the business of destroying innocence and fighting truth to maintain its power structure. It hates and burns and attacks and molests and lies anything that challenges a tired and old dogma. It's not that there aren't good people in there. It's just they're not usually at the top. Because, it was the guy that managed to cover up the sexual abuse that grew high in the Vatican afterwards and was given a bishophood or something, because he developed a magnificent system of buying out parents, shaming children, and rotating pedophiles through the Catholic Church system in a way that would sustainably destroy, the sanity, the trust, the innocence of the children who were entrusted to the church. So Anne betrayed me by recommending Peter the first time and the second time. She betrayed me by not putting boundaries on the recommendation to Peter. And she betrayed me by not following up to see if the person she recommended did a good job. It would have taken her 10 minutes to find out, you worked with one of my facilitators I recommended to you. I helped train Peter. How did he do? Did you learn anything? Did you grow? Do you feel safe with Peter? Did he talk about anything sexual? I see. Well, what else happened? Okay, so that's what happened. My recommendation was full of shit. Okay, that's not your problem. I'm sorry I recommended him. Let me sort that out. That's the betrayal. Now, when I took the issue to all of the facilitators, one of the reasons I took it to all of them is my instinct was that I needed a circle to overcome the amount of harm and trauma. I didn't want to be just with one person. I wanted a circle. So I asked for help. I asked to be held, and I asked to be listened to. Now, Anne, in her primary role of therapist, should have been there that night. You see, the ethics of a client of this kind of relationship is that if you refer something important, priceless, and there is nothing more priceless than sanity and the human soul, to someone for care. I mean, if you have to lose a finger, do it. Don't lose a bit of your soul. And someone gets hurt because of a lack of skill. You need to prioritize that above all new work and everything else. Now, I understand this psychologically with my clients. In a capitalist framework in particular, where clients are normally viewed as money-making sources as opposed to human beings to be served, there's nothing more painful to a client than, putting in a $50,000 project, having something go wrong after they trusted you and made the final payment and something comes wrong. And what's going through all their minds is this one of those idiot capitalists who, now that I've paid him, doesn't care about me, because he never cared about me to begin with. He just wanted the money. Now, this hurts in a landscape project. It hurts a lot, and I understand that. And that's why I drop everything to take care of the warranty issue. Because the number one thing I need to protect is the idea, because this is the disease of our capitalist framework, is the idea that they don't matter, their money matters. I am not helping that human being if I give them that message. Now, they're all afraid of it because it's happened so many times. So I've got to go overboard to prove them wrong. Doesn't matter. This is happening. And so I do, and it can be crazy little stuff, like that. But that message, am I more important than the money, or is the money more important than me? It's a huge pivot point. The one degrades all humanity, and the other, you maintain the capacity to see each other as equal human beings that are way more important than something as dumb as a bit of money that people made in the first place. You see, if the hand can make a ball out of wood, with sandpaper and all that, you don't turn around and betray the hand by saying the ball is more important than the hand. If people can make money, they are more important than money. But here again, the delusion of the cult wound, where people are sold out for money every day of the week, where our veterans give their lives. I mean, this is why so many of our Vietnam veterans commit suicide. They sell out their lives for a lie. And when they come home with PTSD, we ask them to smile in front of the camera. We dress them up to pretend like we're doing a great deal by them. And we shame them, underfund them, we'll put them on waiting lists, and send them out to their children to be abused. And then we cover it up as well. Let's make a point, because there's all kinds of children of returning veterans who this gets handled by the military. Those men or women fly off the handle, beat the shit out of their kids, and cause PTSD. And then the military protects itself by pretending this isn't happening, and betrays our personnel and their family by allowing this to happen. It's a betrayal. Because that man knows he's a monster. He doesn't know why. He just knew he trusted his government to help his country. And now he is destroying his family. And some of them take their own lives rather than shooting the generals who had the cowardice to send them on a fool's errand in the first place to make things work worse with public money, and then to cover up the PTSD epidemic and not properly fund and protect American families from who they've been turned into by the beast, by the demon that has been unjustly and unfairly granted authority to misappropriate public money. Well, you can get killed in America for looking too closely at these truths, because that demon addict has no interest in your life and your soul. It's just looking for the next infusion of cash. If you've got something to say that might get in the way of that juggernaut, you'll be dead in a week. If they can find a way to get their slimy hands on your body and not be caught and have that interfere with the funding, if it can be done under wraps. That's an important persona to understand in this culture, because it hates everything that's real and true in each one of us. And it's not buying any of this either. It's got control of the psyche, and it'll drive you over a cliff if it can get away with it. It has no interest in life. It wants death. It wants destruction. It hates that which has set it up to fail. So, when Anne didn't show up, she let my little boy know that the facilitator conspiracy was more important than his safety, which let him know that he was alone, which escalated the trauma. When she didn't sound believing when I talked about what Peter had said on a recording, it hurt, because Anne had never doubted me before. And when I had to play her the recording, while traumatized, having asked her to come and hold me and listen to me, and her choosing to meet behind closed doors and behind my back, to the meeting where I ethically needed to be center stage, meaning this entire foundation block pivots on whether or not I come out sane and healthy on the other end of trusting the facilitators. There is only one way to ensure that, and that is to understand and do exactly what I said, which was to listen to me. Because I was the only one not lying. But they didn't want to listen to me. They wanted to listen to the one who had betrayed them and who they had betrayed. It goes both ways. If they had been doing their job, Peter wouldn't have had the role. If Peter was doing his job, they wouldn't have been betrayed. It's a conspiracy of betrayal. So they met with Peter, and every single facilitator communicated viscerally to me that I was to be excluded to maintain room for Peter Sandhill's delusion, in which he assured them, he even told them certain things that weren't on the, that were wrong, because Anne was shocked having listened to Peter. She went to Peter rather than to her client. She communicated, you do not belong to this circle. The person who abused you does. So he is the center. The abuser is the center. All right, every one of those behaviors speaks volumes. And the trouble with the words of coating and reassurance is that you're being seduced into a slaughterhouse by the people who are ethically being bound to protect. By mission, by law, by decency, by mathematics, they are bound to protect my innocence. But my innocence is being chopped up into pieces. I'm asked to believe that they want the best for me while they are conspiring to cut me up and bury me. You see, how can you believe in therapy? How can you believe in teachers? How can you believe in love when the people you hire to teach you are the ones who chop you up into pieces to protect their own addiction? How can you believe and be willing to face the unknown? And this is part of the grief around this dynamic, is that the psychedelic experience opened me up into the positive unknown. And the immediate response of the power structure around me, beginning with Peter Sandhill and moving to the entire board and facilitator body, was to say, you will be chopped up and killed if necessary if any of this leaks out. It's a crazy, how can, the most beautiful thing I ever saw, the most ugly thing I've ever seen, the most beautiful thing I ever saw, the most ugly thing, the kindest thing I ever did was in response to this psychedelic substance. The cruelest the facilitators have ever been is in response to the kindest that I've ever been. The facilitators are slaughtering innocence while protecting the coping mechanism that I used to survive my parents' rape of innocence. Now, what's interesting is that Anne Watts saw this, and because the facilitators partitioned and they charged Anne to betray her client to shut this up, meaning they understand the power structure. They understand that Anne Watts, as my therapist with 5 relationships who had behaved relatively honorably up to that point, they understood that she would have the most sway. And so the best person to push the client into secrecy is going to be her, which is also the deepest betrayal of power. Because now, if Donna had tried to push me into secrecy, yes, she would be abusing her facilitator role, but the facilitator role is not as sacred and vulnerable as the therapeutic role. So Barbara Musser, Anne Watts, Sarah Sandhill, and Peter Sandhill had the highest ethical responsibility. So she came in to try and coerce me not to talk about it and to allow them to silence it. And she did this because I asked for support, and she said, I don't have the time right now. And I said, what about the team? The team it lived in your mission. I am sure if you will put out an email saying we have hurt a participant and he needs emergency help, Can anyone help him? For me, Ann Watts. This is my charge, and I don't have the bandwidth for all of this. That Ann Watts would have been flooded with support. She would have had at least 10 out of the whole community, and not only that, participants would have helped. That if Ann Watts had went on NorCal Announce and said, Dane Rose has been sexually violated under the influence of psychedelics by Peter Sandhill. I recommended Peter Sandhill to Dane. And I am asking you, out of common decency and love and our mission of everyone wins, to send support and love to let Dane know that this is not his fault and that he is part of our community. This is Ann's primary ethical responsibility, both to High and to herself and to me. Her primary ethical responsibility to Peter is to apologize, to setting him up for failure and for not checking on him, and to fight the addict in him that is destroying his marriage, himself, his clients, and the Human Awareness Institute. That is her ethical response to the good part in Peter and the good part in the Human Awareness Institute. But that's not what Ann did. Ann betrayed the good part in Peter, betrayed the good part in the team, the good part in the community, and the good part in me. She betrayed what was good in that moment. She said, no, Dane. She said, we are not telling anyone about this except the facilitators. We're not even telling the office staff. We believe, meaning we met behind closed doors and excluded you. We met behind closed doors with your abuser and worked out a plan with you not present after you asked for support and were left hanging for 3 days. We believe that it is better for you and better for Peter. Now, so who's she referring to? She's saying it's better for Peter's abuse structure because he's not interested in dealing with his abuser. He doesn't want to clean up his mess, so it's better for his addict if his drug of inappropriate power is not taken away from him, if nobody knows that he's an addict, if no one knows that he has a psychological STI that is infecting innocent people. It's good for his addict, and we believe it's better for you because we're going to attack you because we're addicts too. You see, the best way we're not going to attack you is if you keep our secret, and this is usually the deal with the 6-year-old, right? I'm going to come in here and fuck you from time to time because your mother is frigid, right? And I want revenge, fucking asshole. Doesn't want to have sex with a drunk. Okay, fine. You, 6-year-old. Lay down. Now, don't tell anyone, or you'll ruin your mother's heart. You'll do. This is, our secret. I'll give you some money, a little, this, that, and the other. Who's it good for? Is it good for the healthy father? Good for the culture? Good for the mother? Good for the siblings who are asked to divide between their survival instincts and betraying their sister? Good for the little girl? Or is it good for the addict? It's good for the addict. And it is death to the organization. Ann Watts murders. The cornerstone. She doesn't exist without High either, you see? Ann Watts, to the extent that she's loyal to anything healthy in the organization, is loyal to that which is trustworthy within that organization. As she represents the organization, she kills it or gives it life by behaving in an ethical and trustworthy way or destroying that trust. Now, it is, of course, well known in the literature that most people go down with the conspiracy to obstruct justice. So Clinton was impeached not for having an intern perform fellatio. He was impeached for lying to Congress. Now, this is, if you watch the spiral of what takes down an organization, it is obstruction of the truth rather than dealing with it. Meaning, it does not take high down that a facilitator abused their agreements and that the client's health and safety was maintained and the community circle was looped, and everyone understands that a facilitator is not above the law, that a facilitator is not above their agreements, and that a facilitator who is an addict is more expendable than a client and their innocence. When the community receives a message, we at High have failed, we see that now, and we're doing what it takes to put you first. The block is restored. Because everyone knows there will be mistakes. The question is, how are they handled? Meaning, when my doctor discovers that he accidentally left a scalpel in my chest, does he call me back immediately and perform emergency services and apologize? Or does he hope it doesn't show up in the X-ray machine at the airport and that he's out of the region in that hospital before it comes up and, it didn't seem like it would have stopped the heart beating, and, let's just hope for the best. Now, when the official who supervised the doctor that left the scalpel in learns in a confession a few months later, does the supervisor call the patient back and see that everything is sorted out and apologize and just see that the client is better off than they were before, maybe do some free health care in some other area to make that up? Or does the supervisor say, oh my gosh, don't tell anyone? And when the public finally learns that doctors and supervisors are harming clients with loyalty to some misguided sense of the hospital, oh, we didn't want to tell anyone because we didn't want to damage the hospital's reputation. Well, you just did. You just damaged the hospital's reputation, because what you've said is that this hospital is so incompetent, is so ignorant of its own ethics, that it has hired 2 levels of oversight. The very people who are charged with the ethical responsibility of seeing that every patient goes out of here healthy, and that you have both participate in a conspiracy of silence at the expense of the patient who pays your bills. And that there was no system in this hospital that caught that. Now that damages the hospital's trust and reputation. That sees that every doctor who goes forward gets viewed in, incredible thing, in the same way that my last client, was so picky and particular, and he'd have emotional outbursts because he'd been screwed by another contractor. And every time something seemed, he immediately relived those memories where he felt helpless and screwed and treated like shit and not as important as the money. So he was reliving that trauma, and I broke the cycle for him by going patiently talking with him every step of the way, until at the end of that he said, wow, I thought this was going to go badly. It's like, wow. And it's like, yeah. And this company is designed so that it doesn't. and that's important. It's really important. So in other words, the next professional, meaning the therapist that I've dealt with after high, have had much more anger and testiness to deal with than me because I know what they're capable of. So I'm the last thing I need in my system is to pay more money to be fucked over by someone I trust. And so the defense around that is much higher, which is a cost that I bear in response to the negligence, criminal and otherwise, by Ann Watts and the facilitator body. So if you imagine that Ann had written that letter, what does it do? It saves high. But it also stops me getting PTSD. Because I got PTSD not from, I got heartbreak and insanity and explosive energy in my body from Peter's 6-month cycle of betrayal. Where I got PTSD from was being lied to by my therapist, by being turned into a dirty secret, by being asked to sign a contract by Peter Sandhill saying he was never going to trust me again because I'd told the truth and tried to love what was healthy in him. Meaning I was trying to take what was sick in Peter and bring it to his friends, not the police, to help Peter. But the addict in him attacked that kindness hard, blamed me, shamed me. And then Felicia Williams, who has never been particularly kind to me or honest, she won't tell me whatever her judgments are about me. She has them. She won't tell me what they are. She never has, and so I just avoid her. But Felicia facilitated a 1-hour session in which she refused my facilitation. She rejected my request to have the time used for my needs. And she imposed a 1-hour time limit. She said she was doing this out of the kindness of her heart and her love. And then she gave Peter 30 minutes to tell me how much he wanted nothing to do with me at every single level, and how I was ruining his life and his marriage, and I could just feel how much anger and fear. And then Felicia says, time's up. And I was thrown to Peter's addict again by Felicia out of the goodness of her heart. And she made a point, as did Anne, to lie, because the ethics of this is they referred Peter to me, and they trained Peter, and they said that Peter is okay to work with. And they lied. That's not the case. And when I asked them for help, they didn't show up. That betrays high and the underlying trust metric. And then high sent me this contract and said, this is not a high issue. Now, what this did was it took a mathematical dynamic in which every facilitator was indebted to me for setting me up for failure and harm. But they denied that, and then they came in on a high note, where rather than Felicia saying, I'm so sorry, every workshop we've been in, I've recommended Peter to you, and I've recommended him to other people as well, and you are not going to come out of here sick under my watch. Whatever went down with Peter, you're coming out healthy. If we can't do it, we'll get you another therapist. That would have ended it right there. Felicia Williams, behaving like an adult and understanding her math, would have ended it right there. Felicia Williams also could have written to the community and ended the PTSD, because the PTSD comes from shame and terror. And the shame and terror comes from the system of lies and abandonment.